Hello and welcome everyone to our session on SAP Backend Printing with Universal Print. My name is Holger Bruchelt, and I'm a product manager for SAP Integration. With me I have two colleagues today, Saurabh.
Hi, my name is Saurabh Bansal. I am a product manager with the Universal Print team.
And Devansh.
Hi, I am Devansh Jain, and I am a software engineer on the SAP on Azure team.
So before we go into our actual topic, I quickly want to highlight what we want to talk about today. So at first, I'll start by talking about SAP. What is SAP? What can you do with SAP? And how is Microsoft actually working together with SAP? Then I'll hand it over to Saurabh, who will talk a little about universal printing. And then finally, Devansh will take a closer look and actually show you how universal printing can work with SAP. So to get started, SAP is one of the world-leading producers of software for managing of business processes. So you see a lot of SAP software when it comes to ERP, enterprise resource planning, when it comes to supply chain, when it comes to manufacturing processes. And that's actually obviously some of these scenarios where we see a lot of customers that need to print, where printing is a very important part of their job. Now, how do we make this happen? How can you enable SAP printing in the context especially of cloud systems? So we see a lot of customers that run their SAP systems, not on premise like 10, 15 years ago, but they really run their SAP system in the cloud on Azure. So how can we work, or how can we enable that customers that run their SAP systems in the cloud, how they can still print? And actually, that's something when we take a closer look at how the collaboration between SAP and Microsoft has evolved over the last 30 plus years. So when we look at the collaboration, the integration of SAP and Microsoft services, that's where we see a lot of different pieces. So when we talk about how customers can run their SAP systems best on the Azure cloud, when we look at security-related topics, how customers can protect their SAP systems on Azure, when we look at data and analytics, when we look at low-code integrations with Microsoft 365, or in general, the integration of SAP and Microsoft processes. There are a lot of things where Microsoft and SAP have worked very, very closely together to actually get you the best out of these two worlds. And now again, coming back to our printing scenario, let's say you are a manufacturing customer. Let's say you have already migrated your SAP system from your on-premise environments into the Azure cloud. And now all your services, all the information that you have in SAP are running in the cloud. But obviously, when you need to print shipping labels, when you need to print descriptions that you have to put in your package information, how can you get this connection from the cloud to your printers that run in your on-premises environment? And that's actually when we take a look at how SAP is doing this, we see two different flavors. There's one flavor that's the front-end printing. So think of this of a scenario where you work in a web browser, you use the SAP GUI, so SAP's proprietary thick client, where you access your SAP systems. And just think of this where a user goes into these front-end scenarios when the user starts to open up a certain form, and when they start to print this one specific form. That's one of the scenarios where you have these one-off printing scenarios where you print, once a day or something like that. But it's a very, very simple front-end specific process. The other thing, which is much, much more interesting, much more relevant in these scenarios, is the back-end printing. So again, considering this shipping label scenario, where you have hundreds of thousands potentially of shipping labels that need to be printed per day. So how do you connect your SAP system to these printing scenarios? Well, there have been a lot of solutions in place, but actually what we see in a lot of cases is that setting up these scenarios is very, very complex. Maintaining the print service, the drivers, the configurations can be really, really complicated. Similarly, when we look at the front-end scenarios, then it's only accessible from the operating system of the specific user. So you need to somehow configure the operating systems where the front-end system is running to your printers. And then obviously when we talk about backend printing processes, one other thing is really, really crucial. How do we make sure that it is secure? How do we make sure that the information that you print is actually available in a controlled fashion, in a controlled environment? And that's actually the solution where we have now a nice integration of universal print with SAP. So in order to give us a little more overview of what universal print actually is and what you can do with this, Saurabh, let me hand it over to you.
Thanks, Holger. Let's talk a little bit about what universal print is, and then I'll hand it over to Devansh to really talk about how universal print is trying to solve the problems that we have with SAP printing. Universal print is envisioned as a secure and a simple cloud print solution for all the Microsoft Cloud customers. Either they are in hybrid Active Directory environment or they are completely on the cloud. Universal print enables cloud support through universal print ready printers, which can talk directly to universal print over the internet. OEMs have launched a lot of universal print ready printers in the market, as well as there are printers in the market which yet do not support universal print directly. Such printers can be put behind a connector. A connector is a piece of software that comes with universal print, and you can install it either on a Windows server or a Windows client. Connector talks to the printers on the local network and then sends all their information and collects the jobs from universal print into the cloud. The printers once published into universal print can then be downloaded or searched and added on the devices by the users, either on their Windows devices or Mac devices, or even used directly through the cloud applications like SAP or through OneDrive for Business or Excel, etc. Universal Print offers multiple benefits. It is already available with most customers' Microsoft 365 subscriptions. In other words, it may already be available in your licensing and you may have to start using it. It helps you go serverless, where you could get rid of all your on-prem servers and move to a cloud-only environment, helping you save costs. With cloud, there is a requirement around security. Universal Print supports the highest level of security by supporting the printer deployments in zero trust environments. The printer talks to Universal Print using a device certificate, which it receives while registering the printer in the Entra ID tenant of the customer. And the clients and all the other applications talk to Universal Print using the user's Entra ID logged in identity. Universal Print is built on standards, specifically the Internet Printing Protocol, and there are no print drivers required on the client devices. With Universal Print ready printers, you can get rid of all the drivers altogether. With Universal Print, you can also print without any VPN. We have customers who have deployed Universal Print and have disbanded their wide area networks, which has saved them millions every year. All the management of all the printers across your tenant can be done centrally in one portal. We call it the Universal Print Admin Portal, which is hosted in Azure. And lastly, you can get insights through reports and visibility into the individual print jobs. With that, I'll hand it over to Devansh to talk a little bit about how Universal Print is solving the SAP problems.
Thanks, Saurabh. To get you started with the integration of SAP systems with the Universal Print service, we have shipped an open source solution on GitHub. This open source solution interacts with the SAP print queues on the SAP backend via SAP OData Service API Cloud Print pull service and dispatches these requests to the Universal Print managed printers using the Microsoft Graph API. In this solution, we leverage the SAP print queues. These queues offer printing functionalities and let you monitor the printing status. You can point the programs in SAP to send documents to these print queues, and then the printout document is sent to the physical printers. Now, let's look at how does this solution act as a bridge between SAP system and the physical printers using the Universal Print Service. As a part of this solution, the Azure Function app takes care of pulling the print jobs from SAP print queues. Each queue in the SAP system is mapped to a physical printer. That means if a job is added to a SAP print queue in the system, there will be a particular physical device that this solution would send the print to. Once the function app has fetched the print jobs from the SAP system, it then sends the print jobs to the Universal Print Service. The Universal Print Service then takes care of managing the jobs within the physical devices. Today, we make use of the individual accounts to securely send prints to the Universal Print Service using the Logic App Custom Connector app. The keyword here stores the SAP configuration that are required to enable this integration, and the storage account takes care of managing the print jobs. This solution has been designed such that all the Azure resources get injected into an isolated private virtual network where the SAP system is hosted. For ease of use and best practices, the solution leverages Terraform to automate the deployment of all these resources that you see here. As briefly touched upon earlier, this solution uses the SAP OData synchronous service to fetch the SAP print jobs from the system, and this API offers a pull and a notification integration with SAP to manage the print queues. In order to get started with the demo, these are the prerequisites that are required. An Azure subscription ID, where the SAP system is hosted, Azure tenant ID, Universal Print license, physical printer that is registered with the Universal Print Service on Azure, and of course, an SAP system with print queue management capabilities enabled and a user that has an authorization to send out the jobs to these print queues. Given the mentioned prerequisites are met, we are ready to integrate the SAP print queues with the Universal Print. Let's dive right into the demo. To get started with the deployment, you can navigate to the Azure GitHub starter pack for this solution and get to the deployment guide on the Getting Started README file. Here, you will see more details about how this app can be configured. But to get started, we will jump right into the deployment of the backend print solution. This solution has been powered using the Azure Cloud Shell of PowerShell in the Azure portal. Here is a wrapper script that you can leverage to deploy these Azure resources into your subscription. Copy this script and move to the Azure portal. Here, click on the Azure Cloud Shell and then get right into the file editor here. Here you can see I have my setup file already there with the properties defined as which are specific to my environment. Here in the script, you need to define all these parameters specific to your environment, starting with the control plane environment code, workload environment, the location where you want to deploy all the Azure resources, the Azure Entra ID, tenant ID, the subscription ID where the SAP system resides, the virtual network ID where the SAP system is located, and the available address prefix within this virtual network. And then you also have a few properties that you can define, like do you want to enable monitoring on the function app, and the home drive and the container registry name. Once you define these, we will run this script using the script name. What this script does is, this script would first ask you to authenticate yourself, and then after you have authenticated yourself, this script would essentially go and deploy all these resources on your behalf. Since here I am using an existing service principal, it asked me whether I want to reset the password, and I did say yes. This script would take care of deploying all the Azure resources in the said environment, and also ensure that all the resources are tied into this isolated virtual network. Once this script execution completes successfully, you can then navigate to the Azure portal and see that there are two Azure resource groups that gets created. One is the control plane group that contains the Terraform state storage account, and then the other one is the container registry, which hosts the code that runs onto the function app. The workload zone resource group contains all the Azure resources that are specific to this backend print solution. As mentioned earlier, it contains of the function app, it contains of logic app components, the logic app, the custom connector, and the API connection. To get authenticated to the Graph API, we will now navigate to the API connection, which will then store my user credentials to then use those user credentials at the time of sending requests to the Universal Print Service. To do that, just navigate to the Edit API connection, click Authorize, and then this would basically ask you to log into your Azure user account. Hit Save, and then you can go back to the function app to store or to validate the SAP credential. In the function app, there are 4 main Azure functions that run. One of them is validator. Here is where we will validate all our SAP configurations. The SAP configurations that are required to enable this integration are basic properties like SAP username, SAP password, and the SAP hostname. Once you are at the validator function, you can hit the test and run button to open this window. Here, you need to provide a few specifications for your SAP environment, like SAP environment, like what kind of environment does this SAP system belong to, the SAP SID, it's a system ID of the SAP system, the host name where the SAP system is running, the SAP user, and the password. As mentioned earlier about the SAP print queues, each print queue in the SAP system maps to a print share. Now, in context of universal print, a print share ID is the ID of a printer which is connected to the universal print service. You can find that ID. You can find that print share ID using the Azure portal in the universal print service on the printer page overview. Once you have these configurations in place, just hit run, and this function would then validate all your connection property from the function app to the SAP system and the universal print service. Once successful, you will see this message that says SAP connection has been validated. Now we are all set to send the print to the universal print service. The simplest means of integration test would be printing the ALV screen on the transaction SPO02. Find the print button and choose your next new print queue as the output device. This print queue should exist in the SAP system, and all these print queue devices can be managed from the SPAD transaction in SAP system. We will be sending this job immediately to the print queue. Now we can see that there is a new job that has been added to the list of spool requests. Now this spool request would be picked up by the Azure function app that we have in the Azure and then be sent to the universal print service. I do have a printer that I've sent this print job to, and we should see a printout soon. So now, as you can see, there is a print job that is being processed by the universal print service. And once it finishes, the status would change as complete, and then that is when the print status on the SAP side would also be marked as completed. As we see here, this job has been successfully completed. Once your output device reports back to the universal print, the app has notified the SAP print queue on the NetWeaver about the successful print. And again, using the OData API that we discussed, And this is how the backend print solution can ease all your backend printing demands in today's world. In our demo today, we saw how we can simplify printing from SAP using Universal Print. It reduces the device management overhead and helps you get rid of any need of print drivers. Back to you, Holger.
Thank you so much, Devansh, and thank you, Saurabh. Yeah, I hope you saw how easy the integration of SAP printing jobs with Universal Printing is. As Devansh was mentioning, this is now an community-driven open source integration. So we encourage everyone to participate in this. Take a look at GitHub, check out the integration and give it a try. Thank you so much for joining us. Please provide us with your feedback. Take a look at the GitHub repo, and we are looking forward to collaborating with you. Thank you very much.